Did you know that the Bible has some extremely weird stories? From talking to a donkey, to a giant fish, to a sword disappearing in the belly of a fat person, the Bible has no shortage of weird and strange stories. The Bible has nice stories that we have heard since we were young. However, there are some stories in the Bible that are obscure, dramatic, and plainly bizarre. You might not have learned about these stories in Sunday school. Here are some of the top stories that I can't get my head around. 1. The Big Fish Story. Jonah chapter 1 verse 2. Is there a weirder story than the Jonah story? The book of Jonah tells us of how God tried to convince a man named Jonah to go to Nineveh and preach. The town was so wicked that God had to send someone to preach against it. However, Jonah had no interest in that, and he chooses to sail to a city called Tarshish. However, a storm ravaged the ship he was in, and in an attempt to calm it, the sailors threw him overboard. God provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and he was in the belly for 3 days and 3 nights. Some people think it is a whale that swallowed Jonah, but the Bible uses the word fish. The kind of fish that would swallow a whole human being remains a mystery. Surviving in the stomach of a fish unscathed is a bigger mystery. 2. Jesus asking his disciples to hate their own family. Luke chapter 14 verses 25 to 26. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus tells his disciples that they have to hate their own family. The passage in Luke chapter 14 verses 25 to 26 tells it. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple." How bizarre, considering that Jesus was the biggest promoter of the greatest commandment, which is love. The content was likely misinterpreted, or some content was lost over time, and that information was passed down incorrectly. 3. A long sermon turns deadly. Acts chapter 20 verses 7 to 13. Paul was preaching in Troas, and a teenager named Eutychus thought it would be a great idea to sit on the sill of an open third-story window. Eutychus dozed off throughout the long sermon, and he fell out of the window and broke his neck. However, Paul raised him before his family could even start planning the funeral. 4. Other mysterious resurrections. The Gospel of Mathew claims that Jesus wasn't the only one who came back to life. Mathew 27-52 says that the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. The Gospel doesn't tell us much more about these other people who came back to life. Who were they? Why were they resurrected? How long did they love afterward? Did they resume their previous lives? How did they interact with their family members? The Bible does not tell us much more about them, which makes it very weird. 5. Make fun of a prophet's bald head. Get mauled to death by a bear. 2 Kings 2:23-25. I think this is a great story for scaring young people into respecting their elders. The prophet Elisha went up from there to Bethel, and while he was going up on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go up, you bald head. Go up, you bald head." And when he turned around, and when he saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys. From there, he went on to Mount Carmel, and from there, he returned to Samaria. 2 Kings 2:23-25. It is never spoken of enough, but you don't want to mess with God's prophets. 6. Jesus cursing the fig tree. Mathew 21:18. Jesus was traveling along the road with his disciples and followers when he became hungry. He stumbled upon a large fig tree with many green leaves, but it did not bear any fruit. How tragic. Jesus took this as an insult and used all his powers in a pitched battle against the insolent tree. The poor tree did not stand a chance against Jesus, and it quickly withered and died. All the disciples were amazed by how quickly the tree died rather than the whole notion of fruitless endeavor. Jesus took the chance to inform them that you could move mountains or even kill more trees with true faith. Anytime someone asks what Jesus can do, you can always refer them to this story. 7. A prophet arguing with a donkey and losing. Numbers chapter 22 verses 28 to 30. How weird is it to argue with a donkey? Worse off, what is your imagination of losing an argument to a donkey? Have you ever owned a pet and seen it running away from you? Maybe it sees you as an angel. The prophet of Balaam was riding on his donkey when the donkey just turned off the road into a field. Just like any other person would do, Balaam hit the donkey to get back to the road, but the donkey began pushing Balaam's leg up against a wall. He hit the donkey again, but the donkey decided enough is enough and laid down. What do you do if your animal behaves in such a manner? He hit again but what happened is really weird. Numbers 22:28-29 says, Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, What have I done to you, that you struck me these 3 times? And Balaam said to the donkey, Because you have made a fool of me. I wish I had a sword in my hand, for then I would kill you. Well, that escalated. Balaam was so angry that he did not realize the donkey was talking to him. Numbers chapter 22 verse 30, And the donkey said to Balaam, Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Is it my habit to treat you this way? And he said, No. The donkey just wins the argument. Verse 31 to 32 tell of how the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he knew that the angel was standing in his way. The angel clarifies that the donkey actually saved Balaam's life by lying down and refusing to proceed with the journey. What is weirder, a donkey talking or a donkey winning the argument? 8. Losing a sword in your own fat. Judges chapter 3 verses 15 to 22. How fat can you be for you to lose a sword in your fat and not realize it? In the Bible, the Israelites were living comfortably until they turned away from God, and every time he would send a calamity that forced them to turn back to God. God never forgot them, and he would always send them a hero to save them. In a scenario, Eglon, the king of Moab, had taken over Israel, and God raised Ehud as the Israelites' hero. Judges chapter 3 verse 15 describes him as a left-handed man. The Bible says that King Eglon was a very fat man, and when Ehud visited him, he says, I have a secret message for you, O King, 3:19, so that people would leave them alone. It says that while they were talking, Ehud reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and thrust it into the king's belly. And the hilt also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not pull the sword out of his belly, and then dung came out. Judges chapter 3 verses 20 to 22. Weirdly, the sword disappeared into the belly. That person must have been really fat. There are many weird stories in the Bible, but these are beyond my wildest imaginations. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.